Overwatch, a game that has had a reputation throughout the years for being that SJW game. I think it's safe to assume that Overwatch has more haters than it has fans. I mean, really, it feels like some people make saying how much they hate it one of their character traits. Whether it's because TF2 is better, or because of the aforementioned reputation of being quote-unquote woke. But I've always enjoyed this game, and I've always felt like the reputation it got as being woke garbage was unwarranted. But recently that might be starting to change. Back when the game came out in 2016, the game was praised for its diverse cast of characters, got into a controversy regarding a victory pose for Tracer that might have been too sexual, and later in the year would reveal through the Christmas comics that Tracer was actually a lesbian. Because of this, some people might have decided to dismiss the game without ever giving it a true chance, which is a shame because the game was, and continues to be, at least to me, a very fun game. Unlike a lot of other games that go the diversity and inclusion route, beneath the surface, Overwatch was actually a solid shooter game with very fun gameplay that would get you hooked for hours. And what's more is that the diversity in the game was implemented in such a way where it was never distracting or took you away from the experience at all. I think it was done in a very organic way. Despite the little lore that they gave us, the characters themselves were full of life and personality, and honestly, their in-game abilities, so what they do, is probably more recognizable than what they are. For example, when I think of Sombra, I'm not thinking of Mexican women, I'm thinking stealth flanker, sarcastic hacker with a secret agenda that keeps her working with talent, stuff like that. And no one could deny that for the people who actually cared about the diversity stuff, they thought they did a good job and appreciated it. I distinctly remember when characters like Moira, Baptiste, and Sigma got released, there would be a post on the subreddit about how they really appreciated how Moira spoke Gaelic, for example, or how they liked that Sigma wasn't a stereotypical goofy Dutch guy. So why am I ranting about this? Well, I've always respected the Overwatch team for doing what I've just mentioned, rather than falling into the common pitfall of making a big deal and patting themselves super hard on the back every time they released a character that was X nationality. But I noticed things started to go south around the time they announced Sojourn. Now, this is mainly going to be me going off from what I remember, because this is mainly a rant and not a news report. It was around the time before Overwatch 2 released, and we had barely gotten any news at this point. You don't understand what it's like being an Overwatch fan, man. They promise us that they will communicate more and that they'll do better and they'll give us more updates, but after that it's just dead silence before the cycle repeats again. So it's months of dead silence and pain, and suddenly they finally announced that they will be talking about Sojourn, who was already kind of leaked at this point because some Overwatch League player accidentally streamed for like 30 seconds or something. And I remember that a day before this stream where they would be talking about Sojourn, the Chinese trailer for the character gets leaked. So a double leak. But we're like, whatever. I'm sure they'll have more info on the stream. It's going to be like an hour long, right? So we're all expecting this giant info dump, maybe even some news about the game in general. Instead, what we get is this black woman I had never seen before, but I think I later found out she worked at G4 or something when I was watching some random video. Anyway, I shit you not, this stream is 1 hour of this random black woman talking about how important it is that we finally have the first black woman in Overwatch. This has always been a very strange point of contention for the Twitter crowd. Just in case you didn't know that pandering to these people never works. Every time they released a new character, doesn't matter what nationality they were, there would always be a group of people talking about how it wasn't a black woman. Black men? Nah, who cares? Every other nationality? Not good enough. Because you see, these people only really care about American diversity. Why do you think they never bother watching any Bollywood films or any films from any Asian country with a big movie industry, but cum their pants about Asian American characters? To them, Overwatch might as well be all
white males,
because the characters actually live in their country of origin and they're not all second generation immigrants to America, so they can't be heckin' relatable. Anyway, there's this other black woman streamer there, which I think I have seen once, scrolling way down in the Twitch directory, and they got this black art designer as well for this, and you can actually tell the dude is uncomfortable with this, especially when the host starts singling him out to talk about his experiences in the industry, as a black man. Hell, you You can tell they're all fucking uncomfortable with this. Poor Geoff here, practically sweating bullets. I don't even think Kiki's all that thrilled to be here. This other woman is really feeling her oats though. She's saying the talking points we've heard for years at this point. There's this one point where she goes,
and I also want to make clear, I know that this is a topic that not a lot of people are going to want to speak about. And I know this is something that not a lot of players want to talk about because, again, it is a very hot topic and it is an issue that many people feel as if should not belong in a game like this. But I want to make clear, especially with a game like Overwatch and a game like Overwatch 2, there is a thing to be said about representation. Like you have white characters, you have East Indian characters, you have Asian characters, you have everyone there. And you can speak about how much of a quote unquote minority we are. And it's completely fine. If you want to talk numbers, fine. But the fact of the matter is you want to attract more people to the game. You want to attract more people to play the game. And if people don't see themselves represented in that game, they're not going to play it. Obviously, Kiki and I are exceptions because we just love this game so damn much.
If you don't put black women in, then no black women will buy the game. I remember just staring completely incredulously. Like, I don't think you understand that when I say that this is it, this was it. This was the whole hour of the stream. The only other detail they talked about that was in any way related to her gameplay, which is what we came for, the railgun. It was either them raving about the black woman, or them raving about how heckin' cool a railgun is. Here, just to drive the point home, here's a too long didn't watch version of the stream.
Hello, ladies, gentlemen, gamers and thamers alike. Welcome to the Black Woman Railgun, Black Female, Black Woman. A railgun! A railgun?
Railgun, we need a strong Black African-American female in the game.
Yes.
Different African-American female leads for the
awesome.
railgun.
Railgun! The railgun!
Railgun. The railgun and railguns.
I mean, as a big railgun fan, it's a railgun! It's a railgun! The railgun! I'm like, railgun, railgun, railgun. It's a railgun!
It's African-American female. Black Panther, obviously, another cast of strong African-American females.
You know, the railgun.
A railgun is black, female hero in the game, black woman, black women.
A strong black female African-American hero character, an African-American female, more African-American female heroes to join.
This is what you get for having a black woman host, so you're going to enjoy it. But frankly, Malcolm X once said, black woman. He said this, and it's true.
African-American woman as
a black woman, a black woman in Canada, a black woman.
The only content they actually showcased was the trailer that was leaked 2 days prior. It was just the biggest slap in the face. I remember waking up at like 6 a.m. just to watch this live. Never again. Most people thought this stream was terrible, but of course there were some streamers and other useful idiots eager to defend what was very obviously a plan concocted by the suits upstairs, thinking that it was going to go well. Imagine thinking that people who play Overwatch legitimately have an issue with a black woman being in the game, and that the backlash totally wasn't about how we hadn't received any news for months, an update to the live game for even longer, and how they didn't mention anywhere that this was what the presentation was going to be. That whole fiasco was the first big crack that I noticed, but it kept getting worse. A big dip in quality and strange new directions in all areas of the game, not just in the spurging out about heckin' awesome black woman sense. Like, when Kiriko came out, they got these 2 Asian developers to talk about her, and I don't know, man, isn't this kind of odd to you? Sure, it could have been just coincidence, but you really can't convince me they didn't specifically seek these 2 out and awkwardly ask them to do the Kiriko video. I feel really bad because I'm sure they're good at what they do, and you can tell they have a passion for the game. It's just really weird to me that being diverse and inclusive basically means racial profiling at Blizzard, and I'm supposed to be the racist. The next big eye roll for me had to do with Lifeweaver. When he got leaked, the first thing that we learned about Lifeweaver wasn't really his kit, it was that he was the first pansexual Overwatch character. Yippee! Hey, remember when people complained that they seemingly made Soldier and Tracer gay out of the blue? Well, at least those 2 got a full story to reveal it, and Soldier's thing was teased as far back as 2016, believe it or not. So, not as random as people think. Tracer and Soldier are both relatively fleshed out characters, and they're not walking around talking about how gay they are, or at least they weren't before, but I guess that's offensive now? Seriously, over the past few years, these characters that they pull out, who are literally walking gay stereotypes, are celebrated by the people it supposedly represents. Well, I would think that they'd be shunned, and that people would be demanding better written characters that have more personality traits that don't revolve around who they want to have sex with. You telling me you put in a literal Thai femboy who dresses like a giant melt, is all dramatic and sassy, and talks about how he's a disappointment to his family, asking if other characters are gay or not?
Are you and Roadhog together?
Do you ever see us apart?
No. I mean, are you a couple?
Yes! A couple of dashing rogues! Not sure what you're missing here.
And no one bats an eye? What's the difference between this guy and, say, General Blue? That the characters on screen aren't disgusted? Is that all it takes? Because to me they have the same amount of care put into them. Just that one makes people on Twitter say yas, and another makes the same crowd cross their arms in anger. This is legitimately what people who call the game SJW garbage thought was going to happen when they made Soldier and Tracer gay, and the devs actually did it. But of course it's never enough. They need to do more. So then they come out with this little Pride event, and they have a whole big pat on the back announcement about how they're going to do Pride correctly this time. Because no, having a profile icon that just says rainbow is not good enough. And yes, there's people who actually care about this stuff. I remember when they released that icon, people were replying how Valorant and League had every ugly flag. So this year, they were gonna have the new ugly flag along with every other flag you can imagine. And they were going to put gay flags and gay decorations all over Midtown because of course. Oh, and these flags behave differently from every other flag or banner in the game because they wouldn't fall down or move at all if you shot them. Oh, and with this update, the story team decided to throw some darts to determine what other characters they could randomly make gay. Now, I actually didn't mind this update much. Avoiding people has never been easier. But in all seriousness, remember when we at least got a short comic or story for the big gay reveal? Now it's literally, oh, by the way, these characters are gay now, lol. There was absolutely zero indication that Baptiste and Farah were gay. I guess because Baptiste is a flirtatious, sarcastic, charismatic guy, and Farah was in the military and works as a security guard now. Wow, very progressive, Blizzard. Women in the military? Gotta be a carpet muncher. At least they haven't made Mercy gay. Yet. Now, I'd like to tone down the homophobia and lightly talk about other issues I've had with the writing in general. It just feels lower quality now. I could talk about how Genji seems to have basically been flanderized in universe now. Imagine dragging out a dead joke that's been around since the first game came out and forcefully popularizing it again.
Very funny, Kiriko. But I think Genji could use some healing after dashing into that spike.
Now that is the worst thing Blizzard has ever done. Genji has this whole tragic backstory of being left for dead by his brother who tried to kill him, being rebuilt by Mercy and rolling with the Blackwatch boys and having all of this internal hatred within him, then running into Zenyatta and finally finding peace thanks to Zenyatta's help. He's been portrayed as a serious, mature character who, you know, isn't stupid. Now, the Season 5 Battle Pass has a cringy little story to go alongside it, and all throughout the story, Genji is constantly treated like a comedic relief character. Everything he says is completely undermined and disregarded, and of course they had to sneak in a couple of I need healing jokes. I think that this new direction started a little before this, but this is where it's the most blatant. I don't think we've even gotten bad yet. I think that if they ever manage to get a show, or if they do more auxiliary media, that's where the real pain will start. I'm definitely not looking forward to it. Another thing that's bothering me is how I think they've botched and rushed some of the character arcs. There's a couple of characters in the lore that aren't exactly big fans of the Omnics. Off the top of my head, these would be Torbjorn, Zarya, the Junkers, though I don't know if Wrecking Ball counts. I don't think he's ever said anything omnicist. And maybe Diva, but I think that's debatable. Now, Well, because of what this game is, and because of how media is in general, there's only one direction for these characters to develop toward, and that's fine. Classic story about a close-minded person becoming more tolerant after interacting with a group of people they don't like, and realizing that they're not so different after all. It appears that we're now at the end of that character arc, and all of these characters have been nerfed by getting their robot racism removed. But for some of these guys, it just doesn't make sense to me. This is the voice line that initially inspired me to make this video.
I can't believe I fell for all that anti-Omnic claptrap.
They make Torbjorn sound like he just read some very radical, very extremist anti-Omnic propaganda on social media, and that's why he hated Omnics. Not that he sort of helped build some of the early Omnics, and thus, in a way, had a hand in starting the Omnic crisis, which he spent years of his life fighting, and then would continue to spend years of his life fighting the Omnics, even after the Omnic crisis is over, and after the disbanding of Overwatch. Because some of these things in the lore actually destroy cities and cause a lot of damage. And Torbjorn has seen this firsthand. It's actually a very interesting conflict for a character to have. He probably hates Omnics partially because he blames himself for all the destruction they've caused. And because he blames himself, he makes it his life mission to stop them at all costs. But they've pretty much thrown all of this out now, it seems. Dude has gone from total Omnic death to totally loving them. Years of hard-boiled bigotry gone in the blink of an eye, and we barely even get to see what happened. What did happen? Well, he met Bastion. That's it. Really? That's all it took? Years of fighting Omnics, years of being set in his ways, and he just does a complete 180 because he met one good one? That he himself mentions is probably behaving that way because it's malfunctioning? Okay. And again, they're making him sound like he's just a big Omnic racist because of what he's heard about them, rather than actual experience with dealing with them. I can't help but feel like this was a weird attempt from the writers to write in a direct comparison to the real world. You know what I mean? Like a commentary on how they feel certain people come to certain conclusions. Well, hey, even though there's obviously a very clear gap in the story, I'm sure with story mode coming, they can flesh out Torb and Bastion's relationship and give us insight into Torb's changing mentality and give us the pacing that this character arc desperately needs. Oh, go away. Oh, fuck. And Torb might be the most fleshed out example, believe it or not. There's Zarya, who saw her village get destroyed as a child, and who got jacked just to defend her country from the Omnic menace. Had her whole outlook changed by a cardboard who she didn't like for 97% of the story in the worst comic they've ever made. As for the Junkers, I don't know why they're not omnicists anymore. There's literally no explanation. Their entire culture revolves around ripping Omnics to shreds for spare parts. The reason they're also radiated and fucked up is because they had a little fight with the Omnics themselves, and they certainly don't like them in the first game, but it's pretty much been retconned out of them. Junkrat is just cool with all the Omnics now. The closest Junker Queen comes to saying anything anti-Omnic is an interaction she has with Sojourn where she's vaguely threatening to basically dismember her, but she's not an Omnic. And well, Roadhog is Roadhog, so I guess you could say that there's been no change with him since he doesn't really talk. Like I said before, the Junkers being giant robot races is basically embedded into their very backstory and setting. So I don't know how they're going to explain this, but hopefully the story mode clears that up for us. Oh, shit. And I know it's a little weird to complain about how my robot racism isn't portrayed realistically enough in my video game, but with media like this, the writers obviously want to send a message, as cliche as it might be, and maybe they hope to change some hearts and minds out there, as grandiose as that goal might be. But how are you going to make a story that accomplishes that when you get lazy with the details? Just think the dialogue has gotten dumber in general. Mora's new interactions really do feel like stuff a Redditor would come up with after they've walked away from an argument and are remembering it in the shower. And Sigma has become more lol random and less terrifying. But I guess it's true what they say. You can't write a character that's smarter than you. Now, I'm no Sherlock Holmes, but I'm thinking that the reason we're seeing all of these weird decisions and change of direction now and not before probably has to do with the massive walkouts and layoffs. Frankly, I was shocked they even managed to get us a game at all. They got some new subpar writers and new managers that want to do things a little differently. It's funny, when Michael Chu walked out, I was actually glad. While I didn't think he was to blame for the absolute lack of lore content that we had for years, since, you know, if he wasn't doing his job, he would have just been fired. I did think that even when he was allowed to release something, that he wasn't a very good writer, and some of his ideas seem pretty horrendous. Whoever they got now though might just be worse, since now not only do they seem to be getting more and more pandering, but it seems that they don't even know the lore of their own characters enough to develop their stories in a way that makes sense. Oh, also, I'm adding this last minute, but I just watched the Genesis animated shorts on their YouTube channel. They're competently made. The animation is nice. They basically rehashed the story from that cancelled 2016 comic, but I feel like they retconned some stuff regarding the backstory for the Omnics. According to these shorts, after the Omnica company shut down and all the Omnic production factories were abandoned, the god AI Anubis activated every Omnic and controlled them to kill every human, because the AI concluded that that was the best way to protect the environment. Every Omnic was affected, except for Aurora, who had achieved sentience. It wasn't until after the Overwatch team had found Aurora again, and she sacrificed herself to give the Omnic sentience, that some of them decided to lay down their weapons. So, every Omnic that we've ever seen is a war criminal. That's pretty much what they're telling us with this. That's the only thing you can take away from this information. Do they realize what they've done here? I mean, look, they even make this fucker say, unironically, that he was just following orders. Holy shit.
Annihilation, or victory, depending on your point of view, seemed inevitable. And I know I had no choice in the matter. I was under the control of the Anubis program.
Did they give the Omnics mass pardons for their crimes? Maybe offered them a chance for freedom by helping them build Horizon Lunar Colony? Zenyatta was out here mowing down unarmed civilians and just settled down to meditate in Nepal like nothing happened. That is now my headcanon based on the information they've given us, and you can't convince me otherwise. Anyway, I think I ranted enough. Conclusion: Overwatch sucks, the writing sucks, the story sucks, the game sucks, Blizzard sucks, and I am the biggest sucker on the planet for continuing to hang on every step of the way.